Hi class, I wanted to provide some clarification on how we bring our drawings into a 3D software, kind of basic techniques about how we go about modeling and getting it all set up to bring into Mudbox. Again, thank you so much for all of your patience, and as always, feel free to email me if you have any questions, and I hope this helps out quite a bit. So I'm just showing you a basic hammer. I know a lot of you have some much more creative ideas, and some of them do need to be simplified a little bit, but that doesn't mean your idea won't get to be done. I would highly recommend you do that, in courses to come. For this one, we may want to just take the main idea, base shapes, kind of what we're dealing with, and see how much detail we can add. So as you can see, I'm here in Photoshop, and I have my front and side view. Labeled my layers because that's pretty important. And then I used rulers to really make sure that things are lining up. If you're unsure about how to do rulers, it's Command or Control R. And that brings up these rulers on the top and side. And then you just need to place your mouse inside of that ruler and click and drag. If it's a horizontal line, you want to drag up or down. If it's a vertical line, drag into the side. But you can drag down and then just make sure that everything is in alignment. Some of your shapes might need more ruler lines, some of them might not need as many. But as you can see, where the end of the hammer comes down here lines up with my drawing, top of the hammer here lines up over here, this edge across lines up, and the top and bottom. This is very standard. No matter what you're modeling, you want to create a model sheet that is even. What we're going to do is bring this into the 3D software, and we're going to look at them and try to model and match up these views. And if they're not matched up, you're going to run into a lot of difficulty. You're going to have to pick which one you want to deal with and kind of fake the other side. So it's always kind of that measure, what's the phrase? Measure twice. Of course, now I'm not going to be able to think of the phrase, but you know what I'm talking about. So work a little bit harder on your pre-production so that your production will go smoothly. So once I have this done, all I did was hide each of my layers one at a time and move my object in towards the center. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to get it kind of centered so that when we bring it into our 3D software, it'll be easy to work with. I save these out just as JPEGs. Maya and 3ds Max, kind of as simple as you can, the better. Obviously, you want to have detail and all of that, so don't save it as a pixelated small JPEG. But as long as you've got resolution and size, a JPEG will be more than fine. Now, for 3D software, I actually am going to use Maya. I know the class is kind of split between Max and Maya. If you're using Max, pay attention to the theory and the words that I'm using. Your tools just might be located in a different section. So all is not lost. They do the exact same things, especially for this earlier kind of portion where we're base modeling. You just may have to use a different menu. And of course, you can always email me questions, or if you'd really like, you can Skype with Max and he will show you more of a step-by-step in 3ds Max. All right, so I know some of you are brand new to 3D software. I think the main things to kind of get used to are your viewports, hand placement, and the main tools we're going to deal with. So, for example, I like to keep my thumb on the spacebar, which will toggle between my views. Wherever your mouse is what view it'll make larger, and you can tell what view you're in. It'll say at the bottom. And this goes for Max as well, you want your fingers kind of on the W, E, and R. I've got my ring finger on W, and these are your move, rotate, and scale tools, okay? They're also over here, but it's a lot easier to get used to using the hotkeys when you're into modeling, all right? And then depending on what software you're using, you're going to want the viewport navigation. So, command, then left mouse, middle mouse, right mouse, or if you're in Max, it's all middle mouse kind of functions. Again, feel free to email me if you'd like me to go over this more, or I can put up some charts probably of just the shortcuts that are commonly used or that I would recommend. So I'm going to hit spacebar. I know that I have my front and my side drawing because that's what we did in Photoshop. So I can just go into View, Image Plane, and then Import Image. Mine's on my desktop. I forget which one I was in, side. And then Open. By default, Maya nicely puts our image at our 0, 0, 0 axis and has it facing the right way. So we can do the same thing for our front view. Image plane, import image, and do front, open. All right, so if I look in my perspective view, you can see nice and lined up. And that's what's important. If we were not having these lined up, you might see one kind of looking like this. I mean, the actual image planes would be lined up, but if you didn't take the time to make sure your object was lined up, that's where you could run into some issues here. Looks like I might actually be able to bump this down just a little bit. All right. So all of that hard work for your milestone 1, you know, getting your references to actually draw your images and then bringing them in here will help you out. I'm going to look at a side view. My side is a little bit, you know, has more detail with the actual top here. So I'm going to focus in on this. No matter what you are creating, you can always start with a basic primitive. Primitives, no matter again what software you're in, we've got spheres, cubes, cylinders. As you advance through modeling, a lot of times we can do what's called planar modeling, which is just modeling from a plane and building from there. But for what we're doing now, I think starting off with a cube is going to be the best bet for most of us. If you think a cylinder might be a better place to start, you're welcome to use that. But I'm going to create a cube. All right, so I've got this cube here, and what I need to do is start molding it to fit my drawing, okay? Well, first of all, I can't see through this cube to see if it even matches my drawing. So I can go into shading, which is right in my viewport, and go into X-ray, okay? So once it's in X-ray, I can see through it, so I know what I'm going to need to do. If you're in 3ds Max, you need to make sure that you're dealing with an editable poly, which means that we can actually mold and create with it. All right, so no matter what software you're in, we can be into object mode, vertex mode, edge mode. So in Maya, if you right mouse click and hold, that's how you get to these different sections. So if I'm in edge mode, instead of being in object mode, I can select an edge and move that in. I'm going to actually click and drag to select my edge so that I know I'm selecting the front and the back of the cube, but then I can move this in. Can do the same thing over here. And again, that's where your hotkeys come in handy. If I'm moving, it's W, rotating is E, and scaling is R. I know, why don't they make rotate R? Just to mess with you, but again, move, rotate, scale, W, E, and R. So then we can click this in. Now, we want to start as low poly as possible. So right now I have 6 faces because I have a cube, and we don't want to just start adding detail for no reason, but obviously I need to start getting this kind of taper that I have going on here. I'm going to go into object mode. To start off with, I can probably move this down a little bit and just get it to be where my handle is. And if you want, I can go into edge mode, click and drag. Remember to always click and drag so that you're grabbing what's behind your object. Most of our objects are going to be symmetrical from front and back. Granted, my hammer is not at the top, but for the most part, that's what you're going to want to deal with. All right. So now that we know about different modes, aka vertex, edge, object, face, you can play around with things that way and using move, rotate, and scale. But we also have a few tools that I think will be beneficial in helping you model. These are called extrude and insert edge loops. You can kind of do almost anything with edge loops and extruding. There are a lot of tools that you can deal with. I think my menu is cut off from my video, but if you go into the edit mesh window, you'll see these are kind of all of our main mesh adjusting tools. You also have your mesh tool section here and mesh. So there are quite a lot of modeling tools, and Max users, you guys still have the same tools, same, in your editor over here where you can stack them, a lot of different editing tools. So what I can do now is I can either do an extrude and start bringing this top face up, or I can insert some edge loops and kind of move them around. I think for the sake of things, I'm going to extrude. So what extrude does, and I'm going to look in a perspective view so that I can grab that face, but it takes whatever faces you have, and when you extrude them, you can raise them up and you're getting a new edge loop. So I'm going to right mouse click and hold and go into face mode. And if I grab this top face, I'm just selecting this. If I just were going to move it, I can make this as tall as I want, but I've lost the edge loop that I had before, and I'm not really able to edit anything further. On a side note, you can hit Z to undo. But if I do an extrude, which is our little icon here, or you can go up to Edit Mesh and then Extrude. So when you do this, you can see that your gizmo, or that arrow directional, changed to a different icon. You can see we have this option window here. Now you can click and drag on any of the words to change what's actually happening, or you can use this gizmo. So I can look back at my side view here, and then I know that I just want to extrude this up to where I actually have that line on my hammer. So I'll bring that up. And then I want to scale it in because I can tell that those are inward. So again, I can hit R, and I want to make sure I'm grabbing this center one, because if I just do it in one direction, it's not going to do it to all four sides. So if I grab this yellow one, we're actually doing it on all four sides. And then I can scale in. All right, and then I can do another extrude because I still have the face selected. Sorry, my mouse is a little tricky here. So I can go to Edit Mesh Extrude, I can hit my extrude button, or I can actually hit the letter G, as in great, and that redoes my last action. And then I can bring this on up as high as I want. And again, it's better to start out with as little detail as you can and then add it in. So I can see that maybe I want to move this a little bit, maybe I want to scale it, but I kind of tell like, maybe I should have had this down a little bit. So what I can actually do is move it towards the center where I think it's kind of the smallest, then scale it in. And then I can do an extrude, bump that up. All right, now then I can do another extrude. Hi, sorry, my recording device will only let me record a certain amount of minutes at a time. So we're back. To create this top part, what I want to do is do another extrude, but what I'm going to do is just bring it all the way to the top. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is grab each face that's on the side and extrude those outward. Okay, now luckily you can do the extrude at the same time, but if you go to adjust them at the same time, it won't work. So it's up to you if you want to select, the side on the right and the side on the left and do an extrude, or if you'd rather just do them separately. If you want to change views, you can just go to Panels and then like select your perspective or one of your orthographics. So I'm going to actually just grab this back face and I'll go back to my side. I'll do an extrude. And I can move this out. Again, we're not focusing in too much on exact placement. I mean, if you want to do a little bit of a scale, I think that would work well. Maybe we could zoom in a little bit. And then we can do another extrude. Move it on over. And I'll actually just go to the end. We're going to keep this pretty low poly. And then I'll scale this one way down. All right, and then I'll go back to my perspective view and we can grab the other side. Can move that out. You always want to make sure that you're in your orthographic views so there aren't any angles that are kind of editing the way you're seeing things. And I'll do another extrude. I haven't even fixed it yet and that's completely fine. We'll do another extrude and one last one. All right. So now what we can do is kind of use our vertices to adjust and make this fit. So I'm going to go into vertex mode and I'm going to click and drag to make sure that I'm getting the vertices that are right behind it. I'm going to move this out. And again, it's not going to be perfect yet. We will come back and we will fix. Just trying to get the main idea here. I need to get a new mouse that does not zoom out every time I go to move. All right, over here we can adjust a little bit. All right, and then we can bring down our top ones. You can do multiple sections at a time if you know all of those need to come down. But awesome, we have the beginning of our hammer. It's looking really nice. Again, it's low poly, but we need to look at our front view. So we can go to Panels, Orthographic Front, or hit spacebar and pick. Like, oh man, that is not the same. And that's okay because that's what 3D modeling is all about. It's looking at all of your views and making sure they fit. You're gonna go from the front to the side and back and forth and checking your perspective view. It's actually important sometimes to see both. So what we can do is show all 4 viewports, and this works in 3ds Max as well. And if you place your mouse kind of over them, like where the viewports meet, you can click and drag and adjust so I can actually see both views at the same time. All right, so I'm going to start moving these vertices in. So I'm going to click and drag, make sure I'm grabbing the one in the back as well. Now you can see that if I move left and right, nothing is happening in my side view. If I go crazy, it does because it's going through the page. But if I move up or down, that's when I start to run into the issues. So when you're just dealing in, your front or side view, make sure you're only working in that left to right moving area. And that's why your drawings are so important. And when you made your base kind of mesh, you should have had that already set up. So I'm just gonna kind of rinse and repeat, and bring all these in. All right. And this will take some time. We'll need to insert some edge loops, and that's what we're going to get to next. Now in Maya, we have in the Mesh Tools, Show Modeling Toolkit, and this opens up over here. A lot of people like this, and actually this looks a lot more like 3ds Max. So for you Max users, this is kind of what you're used to seeing. Same kind of stuff, so feel free to use that. But the next tool we're going to talk about is edge loops, okay? So what an edge loop, any of these edges, edge loops are important because that's what determines appropriate topology and edge flow, okay? You never want to have an edge, I claim that it's holding hands, but you never want to have an edge that's not holding hands with another edge. So you can see if I grab an edge, let me get in my perspective view so you can see this a little bit better. if I double click on an edge, it should bring up the whole loop. So you can see I've got edges that are always connected to another edge. All right, so you never want to have an edge just end. Sometimes when we're modeling, someone might, delete an edge, okay? And so we can see that now this edge has no connecting edge, and that's not something that's good because you're removing the four-sided polygons, and this will cause issues when we go to bring it into Mudbox. All right, and again, I'd be glad to go over any of these topics if they're confusing. Go back to my side view. All right, so we're going to insert an edge loop, and what's great about this tool is it inserts the whole loop, and it will go down your entire model as long as your model is clean. If you don't have connected edge loops, Maya or Max are not going to know where the loop is supposed to go. So you want to make sure when it does it that you actually can see the whole loop. But I can go to Mesh Tool, Insert Edge Loops. All right, so maybe I think I need to add a little bit more detail here so that I can get this taper out. Your edge loop tool is going to go perpendicular to the edge that you click on. So I want to click on a side edge, and you can click and drag if you want, or just click and let go if it's where you want it. And voila, you've got a new edge loop there. I like to hit, move, rotate, or scale to get out of the edge loop tool, but then we can go into our vertex mode and grab these vertices and move them over to fit our drawing a little bit more. And you do have a little bit of freedom. Maybe I want to bring this in and this one out a little bit. Our drawings are meant to help us. If you ever find that they're kind of just causing problems and hurting you, then it's, not worth following exactly. So obviously I would edit this a little bit more, getting more curves. I'm going to need to insert a little bit more edge loops, here, and just moving around vertices, cleaning things up. But again, don't just add edge loops to add edge loops. Think when they're important and when they're needed, because the more complicated we get from the start, the harder it's going to be once we're in Mudbox. You want to make sure it's clean and nicely laid out so that we won't have any of those errors when we import to Mudbox, and we'll be able to add subdivisions and detail and texture from there. All right, so I'm going to leave this video for now. On Wednesday, I will be posting a video about Mudbox and what we're going to do, importing it in there, adding texture, making sure that you're all set for your next milestone and this week's assignment. So again, I hope this helped, and please let me know if you need anything. Thanks.